It's a good experience.
Specialized.
Not too far away, so.
All right,
Exactly.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our budget hearing, and we'll open with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn it over to Mr. Schultz.
Yeah. You didn't have a game, did you? All right. Good evening. There's two more people than I thought were gonna be here, all right? Will, I had you
There they
pegged.
are.
I really did, but then I thought, he's gonna call me tomorrow. He's busy. That's for playing pickleball. All right. Welcome. We'll go through real quick. Again, this whole budget process this year was not out of control like others I've experienced. It was pretty mellow. We had to wait on the state budget, but again, we just went with the governor's proposal. That proposal did not change. Actually, it changed 1/10 of a percentage point for us. We didn't even tackle it in the budget. It'll come in as additional aid. I don't even know, a couple thousand or so. Some districts saw some increases. A lot of them stayed basically status quo. I think she was focused a lot more on different policies and initiatives, cell phone ban, we've probably heard about that. So we were anticipating or hopeful that another 1% would go on top of foundation aid. It didn't, it stayed right at the 2%. So categorical aids changed a little bit. They did increase, I think it was about 30,000, am I correct? 26,000, maybe 30,000 in textbook aid. That dollar amount has not been touched for at least 20 years, so if anyone's going to buy a textbook nowadays, you're talking $100 a piece, and that number was at $26, I think, for the last 20 years, so no big changes on the financial end. We always start with our vision and mission, and that kind of encapsulates how we pick and choose, or not pick and choose, but formulate the budget each year. I will say, coming out of the gate, we do have some retirements. All those retirements are being filled. There are no loss of FTEs. There's a couple additional FTEs, but those are things that we've already discussed, and I'll get into that in a minute. So, but all retirements that we have, currently one on the books, we'll have another one here very shortly to be voted on next week. Those will be replaced. So, just in the budget development again, it's just to align everything with the program. We take a look a lot at what we're doing, what we're not doing. If we find something, we meet with the administration on a regular basis each year to talk about what is being utilized, who is utilizing it. If we have one person utilizing a program that's supposed to be utilizing a whole department or building, we'll look at maybe that's not working correctly, we'll look at an alternative. So we do a lot of that throughout the year behind the scenes. I know right now we are looking at some things as far as we utilize a program in middle school, high school only, and we're looking to, it's Maya Learning, has to do with assessments and learning platforms. We're looking at adding on the elementary piece of that with a different program, and I think it's called Zello, and that actually is the same price that we're paying now, but we get the entire district, so. And again, being fiscally responsible, you know, we very good as far as tax levy goes. On average, we're about 1.5% over the last 10 years. So we've gone up a little bit in the last 2 years, but again, still underneath the cap. Revenues, most of our revenues are made up of state aid and taxes. We make up probably almost 90% of our revenue stream are those two pieces. I would say that it's shifted, you know, probably a percentage point or two in the last couple of years as far as state aid is not as abundant as it has in the past for some districts. We usually see about a little less than $200,000 increase each year. Categorical aids will go up, but of course you have to spend that money to get that money back in the next year. Categorical aids are the BOCES aids, transportation, and special education. So we have pilot revenue, which we have about $200,000 from outside businesses that contract with the IDA. We have state aid taxes, and then reserves fund balance. And we're seeing, we're not one of the only districts out there, we're probably just about every district out there that's probably seeing as a cost increase, they want to keep taxes low, your reserves and your fund balance is being utilized a little bit more. This year, it kind of took a different stance. We're trying to pull back on that. I don't really want to get into a situation where we're relying on our savings to balance a budget. So not, cutting it off completely, but to back it down each year, and then keep looking at program and try to keep, again, not taking away reserves or fund balance and increasing taxes, but trying to find a happy medium. So like I said, property taxes, between property tax and state aid, and this is state aid and building aid, it's separated out, you're looking at probably close to 90% of revenue. So that's, I would say, I was just talking to a district today that their state aid runs about 60%.
Wow.
And then about 35% in taxes, and then they have about 5% that they utilize in fund balance and reserves. That's actually going down as far as their state aid is decreasing each year, and they're putting more revenue or reserves and fund balance to balance that budget. This hasn't changed that much, it really hasn't. If anything, fund balance and reserves, interfund transfers has probably increased half a percentage point, maybe a percentage point over the last couple of years. Again, it's just trying to balance that out and keep programs here at the same time. So we do a quick snapshot of what we had in state aid runs for last year and what we have for this year. We're looking at a little over $500,000 increase. I know that sounds like a lot, but we ended up seeing quite a bit of an increase in our BOCES aid. That's because we spent more last year. We brought on the MITS service for IT. Therefore, once you pay for that, then the aid flows in the next year. So it's not like we have this $527,000 to work with. We have the expenses that back it up at the same time. We didn't drop anything. So that is an increase. Transportation aid is an increase as well, at $75,000. They changed the formula slightly, so we saw a little increase in that, but we're also seeing an increase because we just signed that 9-bus lease last year. And as we talked before, buses are not cheap. They've gone from about $135,000 to about $175,000 each and continue to go up each year. So the more we spend in that, the more aid we get. We get about 55% in transportation aid. BOCES aid runs about 50%. Every dollar we spend, we get about 50 cents back. BOCES aid does not work exactly like that with everything though. So one of the big things at the state level is districts are trying to push the state to fund BOCES aid even more. And I'll tell you, on your programs, platforms, stuff like that, it's pretty even. So 50% we get back in aid. Where it's much less is when you are, I'll give you a perfect example, PT or OT. If you're contracting with BOCES as a PT or occupational therapist, physical therapist, you're only gonna get aid on the first $30,000 of that salary. The rest you get nothing. They want to try to increase to try to double that so that at least the aid ratio maybe gets to 60,000. It has not passed, and they've thrown it out there a couple times. So, and you're paying when you bring in an OT or PT, you're paying for everything. You're paying for travel, you're paying for their benefits, you're paying for their salaries. So it can get pretty costly. Textbook aid, I'm starting to see. Foundation aid went up 133,000. Building aid went up a little bit. Again, that's associated with debt that we have for the previous building. Some of the drivers affecting the budget, supplies and materials, of course, going up. Contractual increase in salaries. We operate our salaries, we operate around 3.5% to 4% increase each year for each bargaining unit. Vendor agreements, we don't have a ton of vendor agreements. I would say more on the software side. We do vendor agreements with some of our textbooks. And then benefits. Benefits went up, the highest I've seen it in 10 years, went up to about 10.5% higher than what it was in the previous years. I would say that we're still 10.5% sounds high. Very low compared to other health insurance plans out there. I know of a district that just saw a 45% increase in their health insurance, so they're trying to bail out of that to get into another one. They're not easy to jump in and out of, that's for sure. Equipment, we have, in this budget, we have 2 vans. We're getting rid of 1 van that'll be decommissioned, and then we'll bring in another brand new one. And then we have another one to add, only because we have so many runs at this point. We don't need to use a bus, but we have runs going all the way to Binghamton, Norwich. We've touted the idea of sending a student placement to Cobleskill. Placements are very tough to come by for special education placements, so sometimes you have to go a little further out. So we got 2 vans, and then on top of that we have the 9 We have a bus lease for another 9, so we have a fleet of 18, we'll go 9 and 9. We did that one last year, that's a 5-year lease. And so that's increasing the cost. Again, we're gonna get aid back on that, but it's gonna flow next year. And then student support services, out-of-district placements. We saw a little decrease in actually BOCES placements or projected BOCES placements. We're seeing just more placements outside in other districts or other agencies. So those get very costly, thousands of dollars per month for each, and then you have to provide transportation for that too. We do get aid on the transportation if we stack that stuff. And then OT, PT, we're not seeing an increase in PT. And OT, we're at a 1.0 FTE. We contract with BOCES on both of those. PT is about 2.5 days a week. OT is 5 days a week. And then E&L. So we saw an influx of migrants over the summer. We went from a normal of like 1 to 2 students per year to 8. And we're probably going to see that 8 drop to about maybe 5 with the current population we have. So you're bringing in staff, and we've contracted with BOCES as well for that. They come in, we usually in the past years we're about 2 days a week, and now we're a full 5 with a point at 1.5 people trying to get. So we try to move as quickly as possible to get the students acclimated with use of technology, and I've talked about that. And so they will test this month. I think they may be testing this week. They test those students right this week, and then we'll find out where they are as far as their acclimating to English and working in the classroom, and then we'll most likely back that off next year. Not unless we get another influx, and then all bets are off. So. Some of the additions, I mean, of course, we always talk about building a budget. To have a budget exactly the same as each year and asking for more money is a little difficult. So I will talk about some of the additions that we do have. We throw in a couple vans in there. We have a capital outlay project. We usually budget about $100,000 for that, and we get 73% on aid back on it. And that's for just small projects that kind of crop up throughout the year. This year we did not put a full $100,000. We put $50,000 in just to kind of balance that budget out. We also looked at, we have, I don't know, what are we up to, like $15 million in projects that are happening over in the next probably 3 months. I don't really foresee us finding a lot of time to do something extra. I will say that the front steps are where I'd like to look at this capital outlay. I was out there this morning and looked at a few spots, and I said we really need to put some effort into it. That would be something we can take care of that with the capital outlay. Student management software, we're looking at some behavioral management software for elementary and middle school. We don't really track that. We track it on a paper format, so we're looking to do that more digital to track student progress from an SEL standpoint. Enhanced reading and math materials, we use CKLA and Journeys, and we do letters training throughout elementary. I mean, we spend money on that, but our numbers show we're way above the state average. So I have no problem still funding that. I don't think anyone else does either. What we're doing is looking at enhancing some of the math and reading materials for the elementary grade levels. It's the same program, but just enhanced a little bit. And it's not that much, it's only about 5,000 to 6,000 extra. Math teacher, we have, and this isn't an addition, we have a retirement coming through, and we're gonna add another math teacher to our staffing. So we're just switching one for the other. Parent notification software, we currently use School Messenger. And we really only utilize it for snow days. We're looking at Parent Square. I don't know if anyone here uses the Parent Square. I know Liana uses it. I know I use it as a parent myself. So that will give us a lot more freedom as far as teacher use. Teachers can use, Bill, do you use it for your class or all?
Yeah, you can send messages to one student or your whole class, or a whole grade level, like, if there's like a special class, like 8th grade science is coming up, you could send a message just to all 8th grade parents if you want, something like that, yeah.
You can split it up by bus runs, you can split it up by sports, utilizes it, that's what I was used to, games canceled, games moved, here's the time. We have freedom for, right now, the School Messenger, there's only, I'd say maybe 8 users, and they're all usually at an admin or supervisory level. Now with Parent Square, we're actually just in our migration of data currently just last week. And we'll have that, roll it out throughout the summer, and then make it completely, that'll be what we move to in the fall. So
And what's the name of the new program?
Parent Square. And it's an app that goes right on your phone. So they have like certain levels. We bought into, let's say there's 3, we got into the second level. The third level has to do with a lot more community engagement. So we're gonna give this a trial for this year, and then look at that as well. I don't know if we need the community. We have Instagram and Facebook and everything else. I'm not sure if to go to that next level is really needed,
Right.
but we'll look at it. So it's very easy to use. Like I said, it gives teachers a lot of ability to go in and just kind of utilize it whenever they need to, and build their pages also. And then with 812 program, so we started this program this year. We started it around the first of the year. I think it was in December. That program's going very well. One of the things that we are doing with that is, and we budgeted for it, we talked about it, was the teacher that moved into that program, we have to backfill that. So we have, we've sent out, classified to attract staff for that. It'll be another special ed teacher. That program's worked great. I think we have 2 students in it currently. We can get it up to 8, and we're looking at adding. We've got a couple districts that have sparked some interest in bringing their students here, and we will charge a tuition rate for that, and it should basically kind of pay for itself. So. This is just the basic summary, the budget summary. We're looking at almost a 2.6% increase in spending with a 2% tax levy. Exactly, we had a 2% tax levy last year as well. And again, some of the increases, we're seeing increased operations and facilities. That's just basic cost of materials, like I said, vendor agreements. Decrease in non-instructional services, some salaries and supplies. This is actually, we're seeing it just because of some retirements, you get a little bit of breakage from the new salaries coming in. Instructional media, we're seeing a decrease in that, just some shifting and staffing on that one. We're gonna have a retirement, and we're moving the position down 1 step lower to a data person. It's not, instead of a data and then tech person combined. Pupil transportation's it's the biggest increase, about $240,000 increase, like I said. I would normally, the vans are actually being paid for out of reserve money, but the problem is I have to put it within the budget to capture that. So you've got to put it in a general fund budget, because reserve money is actually somewhat considered general fund money at the same time. It's just an interfund transfer that happens. So that's the biggest one. That's the bus lease. That's the vans. Employee benefits went up about $135,000, and pupil services, we talked about outside placements. Again, that's a whole guessing game. You're looking at your population right now, students where you think they're going to end up. Some students stay in programs throughout their career at school, but we're anticipating adding a couple extra. You never know what's going to, students that end up registering over the summer. So again, big guessing game. So again, we talk about balanced budget. We talk about it every year. Expenses have to meet revenues. Exactly what we did. So that's what we balanced budget, and it's about 2.6% increase, or about $580,000 increase in spending. Did a breakdown of revenues, breakdown of expenses. I would say you're probably, on average, you're looking at about 75 to 80% is strictly in personnel. Personnel benefits. It's not like any other, it's exactly like every other business you see. That's where we see the biggest cost. We have about 160 employees here, so you've got that staffing along with all of their benefits. Our benefits alone, close to $6 million. The budget, most, between your retiree benefits, your active employee benefits, workers' comp, all of that, Social Security, FICA, Medicare, all of that. So it's about $6 million of the budget each year, and that'll just continue to go up. We're not seeing as much of, each year I talk about it, we're not seeing a huge increase. When you look at the increases each year for health insurance, it's not people going to the doctor as much as it is the drug side. Yeah. You're just seeing such a big, everything's coming out new, true, people are using stuff where they shouldn't be for other things, but we see, I bet you, just in the, I would say every year for the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen a huge increase in that. I would say that the health insurance plan has done a great job in trying to lessen the blow, I guess you could say. They have all kinds of little steps in place that ensure that if you're going to get a medication, they will try to get the generic for you first before you go to the high end. They're trying to, telemedicine's a big thing. Every time the average cost for someone to go to the ER, average cost, it doesn't matter what you go for, is average is about almost $1,000 to step in the door. So they're trying to get rid of that piece of it, and you've got some of these inpatient or outpatient clinics that are trying to get the same kind of rate, which is jacking up the cost a lot too, so.
So is that like a well now?
They want to be considered, and that happened with Well Now and Oneonta, if you remember. I don't know if anyone was affected by that, but what happened was, so they negotiate those contracts with the doctor's offices, Bassett, all of that, and Well Now turned around and said, no, we want to be paid like an ER would get paid. And so KCBP said, we're not going to, or it was actually Blue Cross Blue Shield. I said, well, we're not going to do that because we don't pay the office next door to you that same rate. And so they walked away from each other and then got back together, I don't know, after Thanksgiving or something or whatever, they had dinner together and they ended up creating a deal, so. I mean, the good thing about KCBP and the reason why our numbers are so low, we don't see the increases, is they have a great relationship with Bassett.
So amazing.
No co-pays, you go to a Bassett and most of them are Bassett now, so it's the Well Now and the ERs that really get, and don't even get a helicopter ride, because that's about $30,000, so. Yeah. So again, pupil service, or personnel's big, what's that?
I said duly noted.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, if you need it, get it, but
Right, yeah.
don't be amazed at the bill when you get it. Again, just to kind of keep talking about this spending plan, we're at 23, a little over 23 million, increase about 582, we're at 259. So almost 2.6% increase. Our tax cap was around 2.5. We started at about 2.9, we're down to 2.5 on that. Again, we try to stay underneath that cap all the time. We've had a couple of years where it's been a little higher, this year being one of them, still staying below, I think is fiscally responsible. Again, we talk about some districts have that knowledge or that perception of we can't leave any money on the table. I don't necessarily agree with that as much. You don't need it, don't take it. Ask for it when you really need it, is really what I believe in. So we talked about, and this is just an average estimate, please. Like I said earlier, every year we have somebody that calls and says, hey, listen, you said it was only supposed to go up this much, and then we talk it through and I realize that they put an addition on or a new garage or something like that, so. Basic start, I'd say on average, we're probably average household, I haven't looked at it in a while, it used to be like a little over 100,000 in this area. I would say it's probably a lot higher now. So even at the, let's say 150,000, it's about $2 more a month for the tax increase. Again, that could easily change. These rates are only an estimate based upon what we saw for 24, 25. Revals can happen and change that number to a township like that. So it's not across the board. We see, when you look at the townships that are involved in for the tax levy, everyone has a different rate. And it's just the way it's equalized, the way it's kind of assessed. And we have nothing to do with that assessment, we have nothing to do with revals, we just get the information at the end of the summer, so I just wanted to explain that. But this is average, the increases that we're seeing here is average for the last 10 years. We haven't seen, we're not seeing $100 increases each year or anything of that nature for a property. I like to brag a little bit. We always do a little canvassing of all the districts. We showed you that. We actually had 2 BOCEs. We had ONC BOCEs and DCMO. So we were able to canvass and find out what everyone's tax cap was and then to see where everyone's going out with a tax levy. We're kind of sitting in a mix of tied for, what, 3rd, 2nd. A lot of them, I would say, are going to cap. You've got a few that are going over cap. You've got some neighboring districts that are almost 5% tax levy or hitting cap at 5.5. So again, we've always stayed either within cap, a couple percentage points or tenths of a percentage point behind. But again, I think that we're doing everything we can as far as the key program, not losing anything for students, but keeping it fiscally safe. And this one is just for DCMO. All right, so, budget vote, next Tuesday, noon to 8, middle school, entrance, lobby by the gym, same place we've had it for quite a few years now. We'll make sure we have parking all cordoned off. I already talked to the gentleman who are putting the boilers in. Maybe a day you don't get to cordon off anything, don't bring a tractor trailer in that day. So we have 3 seats up, all 3 in this room. Good luck. 3-year terms. Proposition number 1, this is gonna get a little busy. This is probably a busier ballot than I've seen in quite a few years. We have the budget, Board of Education seats, and then we have bus lease. That's about normal. We've kind of sat, we've sometimes added 1 more, but we've got 3 more extra. So, and they're all propositions for reserves. And I want to say this, I'm going to say it multiple times. These reserves are all monies we currently have. We're not asking for any additional money. So we're only simply taking money that we currently have in other reserves and reallocating it to capital reserves. We had a debt reserve that we've used, it's been in place here, I think, for 17 years. I think that's how long it's been here. And we've always used that money when we go out for a project. Let's say, I'm just making a number, it's gonna be a $10 million bond to pay for it. We go back and make sure that the taxpayers aren't gonna get taxed any more than they should. We try to keep that debt the same. And we figure out the number. Okay, it's $2 million. If we pay off $2 million up front, no one sees an increase really, except for the regular tax levy. That's how we've utilized it. The state didn't like that. They don't like the name debt reserve. They didn't like the way it was labeled. So instead, we were using it like a capital reserve is what we were doing. So they said, well, you need to call it that. So we're taking that money from the debt reserve, putting it into a capital reserve, and that capital reserve will be used for future projects. That one is, actually I skipped ahead, that one is number 5. And that's set, you have to set a limit and you have to set a time frame. So we set a $5 million limit for no more than 10 years. 10 years, we can't put any more than $5 million into it. And after 10 years, we have to do something with it. We either dilute it or we extend it. We have 2 other capital reserves, one being a technology capital reserve. We see every year we're buying new computers. You're taking new computers, I don't even know how many we have, 700 plus, maybe 1,000. When you look at staffing, you look at students. So instead of injecting that into the budget each year, we decided to take some of the money that we have in current reserve and moving it over. That way we can sit there and say, listen, we want to take and spend $100,000 on computers to replenish what we currently have. We have the ability to do that, and it doesn't go into the general fund budget. Same exact thing on Proposition 4, building and grounds. We're buying a new truck this year for building and grounds. The one we have, I think, is 13 or 14 years old. I don't know if anyone's priced out a truck lately. They're a lot. So instead of injecting $70,000 into something like that with a plow package and everything else, create a reserve. That way, out of sight, out of mind, when we get to that point, we can say, listen, we're not going to put it in the budget. Or maybe it's a van. Maybe it's another bus. We have the ability to do that. And these 3 propositions, 3, 4, and 5, still need voter approval to spend the money. So next year, when we go to expend that money, we will ask voters to approve those expenditures. So again, it's not just one and done. There's oversight by the taxpayers on it. Again, this is not additional money. It has nothing to do with the budget itself. That is the $23 million. This is completely separate. These are funds that we currently have. We're just putting it into a savings account the way the state wants to see it, and that is more fiscally sound for us as well. It also I will say this for future boards too, by creating reserves, you're putting that money in and holding it. It's not that, well, we're gonna do this in 5 years and then there's a whole new changing of the guard and somebody says, well, we're not gonna do that now, we're gonna spend it over here. This locks it in.
Right, it's allocated, for example.
It does. So everyone knows where that money's sitting and what it's gonna be utilized for. So yeah, I forgot we broke that out. We did, we broke this out specifically just to go out, and I can go over it again. But yeah, again, these are all 10-year terms, $5 million, or $500,000 for the first two, which is the building and grounds for equipment and vehicles. Then you have technology, $500,000 for a 10-year, and then no more than $5 million for the 10-year term on the capital reserve. So we're actually taking, we already promised the voters that we're taking about a little over $2 million from this 5 out of the gate to pay for this next project that started, it's already started. So that again, no additional tax levy, that'll give us funding to look at the next project. So 3, 4, and 5 do not require additional tax money. Any questions about that? All right. Next Tuesday, Sarah and I will camp out from noon to 9-ish. So when it's all done and complete, any questions anyone has come in, we'll be right in the front. And don't hesitate to call my office or Sarah's office or call Lisa to grab me and answer any questions about the budget. And this will be online as well. And that's what I have. That is one more budget complete. Any questions?
Oh, good job.
Just a comment quick, I did see that the much anticipated chicken and biscuit
Yes,
dinner is
Oh,
going to be
yeah.
occurring,
get it in now.
so.
Yeah, $9. Keep it under 10. And that benefits girls basketball. So
I don't know, maybe, depends on what time it's.
I can put a good word in for it.
Could you?
Yeah, make a reservation. You want to, I can get you a table. So,
Hey Carrie, I have one question.
absolutely.
How does the reserve funds get funded? Like where does that, is that a line item on the budget? Or is that something where there's excess money at the end of the year and then the board votes where to channel the money?
You nailed it on the second half, yeah. So of course, I would say there's a good percentage of that budget, and we talk, special education is one of the biggest where we sit there and go, well, I don't know, and we try to figure out, heating fuel's another one I always call the crystal ball, so it's just savings at the end of the year, and you're only allowed 4% of your budget. So on a budget like this, we're allocated, we're allowed to keep as our own savings account under $1 million. Everything else throughout the years, you've got to be able to allocate somewhere else. So, it happens in districts, we run into issues, and I'm going to be a proponent of it too. You're so dependent when you look at the percentage of how much dependent you are on state aid, they can flip the switch at any point. And I've been a part of that. I've been a part of it in 2008 when we had massive cuts to not only education, but we had it to, you were in a huge recession. They made mid-year cuts. So a lot, I know they say 4%, we keep more than that sometimes to combat
Do we
that.
know the projection of what our percentage? I kind of like the idea because I think it saves from having a really steep tax levy and then maybe a dip.
Yep.
So it kind of keeps it streamlined. But I just was curious, do we know what percentage we're projected to have over the 4% that's allowed?
So right now, we're working on that. So usually we try to spend out about 95% of the budget. So usually about 1 to 2% you have sitting off to the side.
Yeah.
I would say right now, we have roughly 8 reserves, I think we have. Workers' comp reserve in case there's an issue. We have a workers' comp claim that hits us and we don't have any way of funding it. We have money set aside for that. We have a repair reserve. I would say your debt reserve is probably your best because that's where you see that fluctuation. Worked in districts where, all right, we're gonna do a project, and all of a sudden, that 1.5% that every taxpayer was used to now has to pay 3.5% because now we have a project. And a lot of districts don't plan ahead like that. They don't have enough money set aside to pay for things they need. So I would say that, you're seeing about 1 to 2%. We've had some years that have been even way higher than that. I remember we ended up with an 11% at one point, and it was right after COVID. But the problem with COVID is no one knew what was going to happen. And the state ed came back to us and said, we're going to cut 20%. 20% is real money. So we injected money into the budget to kind of make sure that when we opened the doors in the fall that we had everyone here, we were able to educate everyone at the same level or try to at the same level during COVID, and then they didn't do it. And all these districts had a ton of money sitting there going, what do we do with it? So then they move it in reserves, so. But yeah, that's usually, I would say, right now, because budgets are getting tighter, aid's getting lighter, 2% a year is probably being moved
To
around.
distribute into them, aid
Yeah.
accounts.
But the debt reserve is the best one because you know that every 5 years, you're probably doing something, and I always attribute it to having your own house. There's once a week, something's gonna, if I get home tonight, something probably broke, I don't know. But, you just know that, you know, workers' comp, I don't know. If you have safe buildings, then you probably don't have an issue. So that's what we have.
Thank you.
Carry on the capital reserve funds, those three particular ones. Is this using some of that 4% money for those, or are these particular accounts that were just established for the three proposals?
The three are new ones. Yes, they're brand new. We actually have one already on the books that was voted and approved 2 years ago. That one is to cover all of the new equipment in the tech area that we're putting in. What happens with building projects is when you buy furniture or equipment, and I mean like equipment like this, it's not aided the same. So what happens is you got all this building project and you go, listen, we need all of that aid back. And then they look and say, well, you spent $500,000 on equipment, now your aid ratio is 60% instead of 70%. So the way to carve that out is to ensure that you get the most for your building project, buy that separately, because you're not gonna get aid on it anyway. So that gives you more buying power on the building and the construction side. So we'll have 4 capital reserves, all for specific items.
Now, why aren't some of these items just like basically covered in the budget? Why wouldn't we just have like a technology budget that said we need equipment? And we would just create that?
Just because I think first it gets that cyclic pattern going in a budget. So this year, maybe we're only looking at, if you have your schedules correct, maybe, I'll give you a perfect example. When you do Chromebooks, they're cheaper, they're $250 a piece. So we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna inject this much money. When we go to do PCs, they're 3 times as much. And that's 11th and 12th grade levels. So I like it this way, to have this because it shuts down the thinking process of trying to project out. We could say, listen, next year we're gonna replenish or recycle 150 computers. But then all of a sudden something happens, fuel prices go up and everything else, and guess what? That's the priority and not the computers anymore. So having it here as a reserve, you can pluck that money out a little easier and not affect your budget as much, or you can still get your product. So it's just more of I always look at all these things as safety nets. So to put it in the budget, in a real perfect world, it's gonna work. You're gonna say, hey, every year we're gonna allocate $30,000 and that's great and it doesn't change anything. But then you run into issues with the other 300 lines in there that all of a sudden you go, oh no. Special education goes up, bus prices are up now, what do we do there?
Health insurance.
Health insurance is a big one, so you're just trying to combat those knowns and trying to combat the unknowns at the same time, so.
On the new leases that we're getting, obviously they're more costly than the last ones that we had, right?
Yes.
We've effectively funded those. And we're just returning these vehicles.
Yep.
For 5 years.
5 year.
Got it. So it's, they were done.
Yeah, and like I said, when I started, I think they were 135, they're at 175. If we were to go to another lease next year, they said they were gonna go up 3 to 4 a piece, just in 1 year. And I would say that the quality, and I feel like I'm my parents or something, the quality nowadays, is a lot less. It really is. But you also look at these buses, those buses have, I think, up to 12 cameras on them now. Everything is, now they want GPS on them, now they're like technological marvels inside of them themselves, so that jacks up the cost as well. Tariffs are a big thing too. That's really affecting, you've got districts, we are in a lucky situation in that we put an intent letter in the fall. Now, if things would have gone south and we weren't able to do it, we would have been able to pull back, they would have sold those buses to someone else. Districts that went in late after the new year, those contracts or those letters of intent mean nothing. And so they're tacking tariffs on top of everything right now. So now what's happening is those districts were gonna buy 10 buses, now they can only get 7. And we're starting to see that a little bit with the project. We just saw they wanted to tack on tariffs on the boilers. And we were able to kind of get that out, only because they already had them at the warehouse. So it wasn't like we had just said, hey, we need 3 of those.
That's not.
They were already here, so we got away with that. I'm curious to see, I mean, I know there's some trade deals that are happening today, in the last couple of weeks. I don't know what's gonna happen when we get into equipment. You know, luckily, we don't have a lot of steel in this new building project. Some HVAC stuff that could get a little costly, but I think that we have, again, we have enough safety nets in there to curtail that, so. That's all you got, Will? I remember, I had this story, when at my very first budget hearing, I came here, I wasn't even hired yet, I had accepted the position, and I sat down in the auditorium, and Will was there. I never met him before, and he asked, I don't know, like 6 or 7 really, really good questions. And I remember I got up, and superintendent at the time said, I'm really sorry about that, you know, I said, those are really good questions, they're always very good, Will, so I thank you for being here, and we always have good talks, so I appreciate it, very good. All right, good, all right, perfect.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent as always. So guess I'm gonna consider that our public comments. Our upcoming Board of Education meetings, our regular Board of Education meeting is next Monday, the 19th, in the High School Media Library Center at 5 p.m. It's anticipated the board will convene an executive session at 5 p.m. and return to open session at 6 p.m. Actually, that is not true. We will
Right,
end executive at 5:30
right, yeah.
and have a pre-meeting to address our tuitioning of non-resident students.
Has that been advertised?
Yeah, I think we were doing it, I think Scott put something up,
Social media on our.
and that's open to the public.
Page.
Okay.
It's part of the meeting.
Right,
So,
okay.
Great.
we're
But
doing
that starts at 5:30.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
okay,
gonna
that's
leave
it.
executive session at 5:30 so that we can come in here and do that prior to 6 o'clock.
I will have an application, we'll talk about that on Wednesday.
Yeah, we're gonna cover a lot of that at policy on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, okay.
As noted, our annual budget vote and Board of Education elections, Tuesday, May 20th, 2025, in-person voting in the middle school building, first floor between the gym and the agriculture classroom from noon to 8. Signs will be posted to guide the public in voting location. And the deadline for items to be placed on the board agenda is the Tuesday prior to each Board of Education meeting. If you have any questions, please contact the district clerk, 746-1306. And I think we get open to adjourn.
So moved.
Steph and Pearl, thank you. Great. Good evening.
Thank you. You too.